Hi there, Andrew Lessman here with a little video blog, just briefly touching on our CoQ10 Today special that's going to be coming up in just a few days. I'll talk about that. I'll talk about Lincoln's use of CoQ10, which I mentioned in we'll have a little sneak peek for the CoQ10 Today special on the day of the Today special itself, or just before. So I wanted to talk about those things. And then also I touch on this in another video blog. It seems that I had said something in a previous video blog about me being politically conservative. And I just wanted to clarify that a little bit too. And because I'm pretty much either side of center. It depends on the issue, but I'm a pretty moderate person, even in some of my more conservative views. I'm certainly someone who appreciates smaller, efficient government rather than bigger government. I certainly hope our government takes care of those who need to be taken care of. So my views tend to be pretty pragmatic, pretty straightforward. I think government should leave our personal lives alone as best they can. But those are the sorts of things that, again, what I often say, regardless of what my political views are, it has nothing to do with the quality of my products and hopefully the integrity with which, as a company, we go about making my products. For a few decades, for as long as my company's existed, we've had no carbon footprint. That was an environmentally responsible decision I made because as someone who loves to run mountain trails and mountain bike out in nature, I've always loved the Native American saying, and I believe it's Native American, that they say the only thing we should leave when we go out in nature are footprints. And the only thing we should take with us from nature are memories. So I figure in going about what I do in terms of my company, we should follow a similar approach. So we tend to be very environmentally oriented. I don't think that necessarily makes me leaning on the left. I think it just makes me someone leaning on science and leaning on the best interests of all of us in this planet. That I think any company that chooses to pollute less, just like any neighbor you might have that chooses to take care of their yard better and not leave their trash all over the place, that's a better neighbor. That's a better citizen. So I just try to be a better citizen in terms of our prenatal campaign. I think we've given away more than a billion prenatal vitamins. That there are women in America, women all over the world who, at a critical time in life when they're giving birth to a future life, that life is going to be affected by prenatal nutrition. So we have become one of the foremost suppliers, perhaps the foremost supplier of prenatal nutrients around the world to mothers in need. Again, that's just being, I think, practically, reasonably speaking, being a good citizen. So we try to go about things. I think that transcends politics. As I often said when I first started my company, we do no advertising today, but back at that time we did. And we used to advertise on radio. And I would do these 30 and 60-second spots on radio. And some of the most listened to radio shows were radio shows that were either politically conservative or radio shows that were either politically liberal. I received countless letters, no matter where I advertised. If I was on a politically conservative show, I'd receive letters from folks with more liberal views and standpoints saying, how dare you advertise on a show like that? And of course, if I was on a politically liberal show with our commercials, I'd receive angry letters from people who were politically conservative that couldn't believe I advertised there. And my response always was that I try to move through the world with respectful views, respectful of anyone. That I always say there pretty much isn't anyone that even if I disagree with them, that I can't find some common ground, that I can't find something that's important to them and also important to me. And I think the minute we start getting angry and too polarized, too partisan, we stop making sense. We stop being respectful. We start being disrespectful. So it's something that I've always tried to do. It just in how I go about business to try to not make enemies, to make friends, to be respectful, to be compassionate. So what I've always said in response, I had 2 letters that used to go out. And they basically said the same thing, but from a different standpoint, that just because someone might be politically conservative and you might be politically liberal, doesn't mean that they gave up their right to be healthy. doesn't mean that they gave up their right to use the best vitamins in the world. And I think no one would think that just because someone disagrees, that they shouldn't be able to buy the same wonderful products that you enjoy. So, and I said that with whichever side the correspondence of the letter was coming from. So, as much as I try to be politically neutral, and I try to keep politics out of what I do, and certainly in a video blog I just did, I talked about climate change. And climate change is not a political issue. The oil companies knew 30 years ago it wasn't a political issue. It's simple, straightforward science. And to the extent we deny it, it's at our peril. Just like those of us for decades who denied the fact that cigarettes were harmful, caused lung cancer, heart disease, emphysema. We proceeded at our peril if we listened to the drug companies. So certainly the oil companies, the fossil fuel industry, had it in our best interests to keep the information they had at their disposal for decades, to keep that away from us, and to invest heavily in misinformation and disinformation. And that misinformation and disinformation is still fueling bad decisions today, bad political decisions that fly in the face of simple, straightforward science. As I said on another video blog, I said jokingly that if people deny that climate change is occurring and global warming is occurring, and there are very few people who do nowadays, I always tell them to say, grab for their seat, because the next thing you know, they're maybe going to deny the existence of gravity and they're going to be flying off into space. The Earth is unfortunately a sealed system, and we have released millions, hundreds of millions, if not billions of years of solid carbon, and we've released it into our atmosphere. And much as the oil companies predicted 30 to 40 years ago that we would be doubling our CO2 levels in the atmosphere between, say, 2030 and 2060, they were correct. And with it, they predicted 30 plus years ago that climate would change with catastrophic consequences. They were correct. Unfortunately, they didn't share that information with us at the time and did their best to deny it. It's no longer being denied. Oil companies are even joining consortiums themselves to combat climate change and global warming. So hopefully this was not too rambling a discussion, and hopefully my political views, which are pretty much neutral and hopefully inoffensive, should have nothing to do with the quality of my products, and certainly they do not. And my position on climate change and global warming, which I've taken this position for almost 40 years, that position isn't a result of politics. It's simply a result of science. Just as I took a position long ago about cigarettes and a lot of other things, being sedentary, being in activity, doing our best to be at our ideal weight. These are just things that are supported by simple, straightforward science. And I think when we start getting attached to things other than the simple, straightforward facts, that's when we can get confused. And certainly there were trillion-dollar influence, multi-trillion-dollar influences that had it in their best interests to have us deny the changes that they knew were already underway. So hopefully all of us will band together, and it won't just be a little company like mine making an effort to stem the tide, but the bigger companies, when they start doing things like I do, operating without a carbon footprint, those companies can make a tremendous difference on the future of our planet, the planet that we're leaving to our children and our grandchildren, which right now that future, from my perspective, and I'm typically the incurable optimist, there is absolutely no reason for optimism right now, unless we say human beings eventually rise to the challenge. Let's hope we do, let's hope we can, and it would certainly be in all of our best interests, because there's no greater threat posed to the survival of humanity than what we've done to disrupt our planet. So hopefully, back in the 50s and 60s, I guess it was the 1950s, interestingly enough, I think it was a Republican president that created the Environmental Protection Agency. And so it's interesting that the EPA is no longer really chartered with protecting the environment, but more protecting industry. It's surprising that I would even say that, because again, I'm someone who is for less regulation, but when it comes to the interests of our environment, I think that's one of those few times where government can step in because otherwise industry is going to continue to act in its own interests, as we know the fossil fuel industry did for the last 30, 40 years, knowing full well the consequences of their actions, which they didn't disclose to us, and they're only now taking steps to potentially stem the tide of those changes. So hopefully the future will be bright. It's up to all of us to, I think, to act locally, to think globally, as they say, and act locally. And perhaps if enough of us act in a way that's in our own best interests and the best interests of our planet, then it really doesn't matter what government does, because as individuals, we can define the path of those governments. So I hope that was not too confusing, and I hope you're going to enjoy the CoQ10 Today Special, because it's an opportunity to get a product that is a 90% discount off of the price it was offered at, say, a couple of decades ago. So, and I've been astounded that we've been able to hold our best price ever on this product once a year for Today's Special. Despite the fact that costs have gone up, we're able to hold that price down there. If you simply look, if you ignore the CoQ10, the most expensive ingredient in the formula, and simply look at the vitamin C, the vitamin D, and the B12 in the product, which are critical to the benefits you get from this product, those alone would be an exceptional Today Special, ignoring the CoQ10. And certainly the CoQ10 on its own would also be an exceptional value at that price. So a product that would normally be a few dollars a capsule in years past, in decades past, is now literally pennies a capsule. So I hope you take advantage of it. I make a lot of very important products, because all of the products we make are science-based. We don't make a lot of products, but the products we make are important products, are essential nutrients, and it's hard to say that there's anything more important that I make, hard to argue that there's anything more important I make than CoQ10, especially because it's not just CoQ10 today. You also get the B12, full B complex, vitamin D, and vitamin C all rolled up in one for an exceptional once-a-year value. So enjoy.